Oh, let me tell you something. Busting makes me feel good.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Blockbusting, the podcast where we love to hate the movies. I'm your host, Jay Light. Joining me today, the illustrious Kyle Clark.
Hey, Jay.
Hey, Kyle.
How's it going?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
I'm good. I'm nervous.
Why are you nervous?
Because I'm like the positive guy of the podcast world.
That's true, and I'm the positive guy of the comedy world, but
yeah, so we're
come
just
together
in this
and-
bunker to celebrate our secret hate.
This is not even, I don't think it should be secret. I will go on the record as hating this movie.
It is
as
pretty
you
bad.
are now. Across the universe.
Yeah.
Fuck.
What is it, 2007 Julie Taymor monstrosity?
Yeah, man, you hit the nail on the head. If you don't remember, 2007 British-American jukebox musical romantic drama film. What a mishmash of genres. Directed by Julie Taymor, centered on songs by the Beatles. It's also based on an original story credited to Julie Taymor and a couple British dudes who it's set in like the 60s.
It
and
hits on a ton of things I hate in rapid succession. Like, it's pretty impressive. Like, it's like something that was tailor-made to slightly bother me. Like, I remember seeing the original trailer and just being furious.
It's one of those movies that it seems like it's a movie that there's a ton of these that come out every year where it's just trying too hard.
Yeah.
And this movie is such a try-hard movie, and it fails on almost every single front.
And it's a movie that normally, like, my feeling with stuff like this is I'm much less somebody who wants to be, like, mad at something and more will just actively ignore it because life is short, and why, like, get fixated on something that makes you mad when there's so many, like, good things out there.
Right.
I was duped into seeing this movie because I was trying to like spend time with a girl I thought seemed real keen.
Oh no.
And it was one of those things where by the end of it I was like, oh, mostly I've just been duped into seeing a movie I hate.
So how did the experience of watching this movie feel for you?
I feel like the thing I have to stress out the gate that's the most important thing to know is that I don't like the Beatles.
Wait, hold on a second.
Yeah. So like
What?
Yeah. So like that, I need you to understand this doesn't even come out of a like this is a travesty because like they're ruining the Beatles. For me, it's they're taking a thing I don't like, combining it with several other things I don't like. So that like I imagine somebody who saw this and is like, oh, well, it's bad versions of Beatles songs, but at least it's Beatles songs. And for me, it's like, oh, this makes it the only thing worse than the rest of the movie is the part where, like, Bono from U2, a band I hate more than the Beatles.
It's understandable.
Like, is singing one of the worst Beatles songs. Because I Am the Walrus is a garbage song.
It is. It is. It's not that great in the Beatles canon.
No.
Okay. There's so much to unpack now. Oh, my God. Kyle, you've opened a Pandora's box. So,
First of all, just know for your listeners, I know I'm wrong. And it's not a situation where it's like, oh, I heard one Beatles song and don't like it. Like, I have done extensive work as a fan of music trying to appreciate the Beatles, and they're just not for me.
So what is it about the Beatles that you don't like?
I don't like their voices. I don't like the way that they utilize melodies. I don't like the chord structures that they use for their stuff. Like, I appreciate the way that they created like a lot of what has become modern pop music. I don't like their lyrical content. I don't like the like syntax with which they use rhyme schemes in their songs.
Okay.
I don't like the sounds of their instruments in their music. I don't like the fact that they don't rock. Like, I just literally like things I like about the Beatles. George Martin's production style, I think, is very impressive. And I feel like George Martin, like the fifth Beatle, who was their producer for all their stuff, is compelling in that when you go and listen to like the records they did with Phil Spector, it's pretty obvious that like George Martin is who made them what they were.
Gotcha.
And I love that there's just like a 40-something like adult fancy British man like just taking care of these kind of like idiot savant children on acid and like making them look good and then sitting back while the world just fillets them for having an old man take care of them.
Everybody loved the Beatles.
Yeah.
And you have gone to academic levels to explain why you don't like them.
Really just because I'm such a music fan that I'm like, oh, I should have some appreciation for this. And I'm just like, literally, this is everything I don't like about pop music. Like, this is like patient zero for it.
Interesting. Yeah, this it's really like this is the monkey with AIDS of pop music.
Because like the rest of 60s rock I've got a real affinity for. Like I love all those kind of like weird garage bands from America and from England. Like I love the Kinks, I love the Rolling Stones. The Rolling Stones, I would say, is my favorite band, one of my favorite bands as long as they died in a plane crash in 1981.
If this is, and the movie sort of takes, obviously there's a lot of Beatles stuff that happens, and the other big obvious overt influence that they use in the movie is Jimi Hendrix.
Sure.
And that's very obvious, but it's a real gnarly way of introducing it into the story, too. And to me, it's a great way of like
shoehorning in like things where they're like, oh, the Beatles weren't interesting enough. There's a level of like insecurity this movie carries, and it fascinates me because like Julie Taymor is somebody I have real mixed emotions about. Mm-hmm. Overall, like I feel like it's kind of a push. Like there's enough things about what she does that I appreciate, and there's enough things she's made. Like I don't know if you've ever seen her adaptation of Titus Andronicus with Anthony Hopkins.
No.
I only know it exists in the first place because it was a trailer on the VHS for Fight Club, and I was like, that seems fun. And I'm in 8th grade and I like Shakespeare because I'm a sad drama kid, and it's a phenomenal adaptation. Like,
okay.
And Titus Andronicus is one of his lesser plays. It's super violent. It's super fucked up. Like, and that movie made me have to kind of reassess because I also don't like The Lion King.
You don't like the musical adaptation of it?
For a positive man, I sure do like hate a lot of fun things that bring people joy.
I mean, The Lion King is one of those music that I think that feels like one of the first stage musicals that I ever saw was an adaptation of The Lion King. And obviously, you know, the touring company is not directed by Julie Taymor,
but it's her concept.
It's her concept, and it's her thing. And I saw that, and I was like, I was kind of blown away. I was like, it's a thing that you shouldn't be able to adapt.
It's a fantastic spectacle that they've created,
yes.
And the undertaking of creating that. Like, I'm not a fan of like the Lion King movie either. Like, it was never one of my ones as a kid.
Gotcha.
And so, like that fundamental piece of it makes me be able to appreciate what they're doing with it, but at the same time it's the thing I'm like, oh, but I'm inherently not interested in what the seeds with which she is building a beautiful thing out of.
Right. And let's be honest, you spawn a lot of Disney adaptations and musicals out of the success of The Lion King.
The Lion King absolutely creates a nightmare scenario where it's the reason we do not have like the kind of fun original musicals anymore. Like the reason the Wedding Singer musical exists is because of The Lion King.
You have movies that basically are created by Disney now to be directly adapted into Broadway musicals.
So you can get
3
them
years
on
later.
A cruise ship.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is it's a total. Oh God! It's a real bastardization of the art form, is what it is.
There's element number 2 is my complex relationship with Julie Taymor. Number 3, and I would say even worse than either of those two things, more than the fact that I don't like the Beatles music, nor do I love Julie Taymor's like approach to spectacle because I find it ostentatious.
Yep.
The third thing, and the thing that really truly makes me hate this movie, I hate cute cleverness.
Okay.
And the entire plot to this movie, I was rereading the Wikipedia like write-up for it, and I forgot there was a whole, I forgot all their names are from Beatles songs so that they could fucking shoehorn in goddamn
Dear Prudence and Hey Jude.
It's like, oh, the main character's name is Jude. Fuck yourself, movie.
That's one of those things that like the first time I saw this, and I've only seen this twice.
Yeah.
Once when I was younger, and I'm sure that you guys have probably noted on the podcast by now, I don't drink or do drugs anymore. I'm a very uncool, unfun person now.
Well, it's a bunch of lames in this room right now.
And I watched that movie when I was stoned out of my gourd, and I watched this movie again a couple days ago, stone cold sober.
Ooh, that's rough.
Which is real rough. And just to be like lucid and awake the whole time, it's not a great way to watch this movie. And I remember even when I was like super high, falling asleep and being like, oh, I must have just smoked too much. And then I watched it again and I was like, oh, this movie is, I wish I understand why I fell asleep.
Do you ever have that with like movies that like somehow always put you to sleep?
Yeah.
I have that with the movie District 9. There is a 15-minute chunk of District 9 I've never seen because I have fallen asleep in the same place and woken up at the same time every time. I don't know what it is. I've probably seen that movie 6 times and I have not seen this 15-minute chunk ever.
I watched before Blade Runner 2049 came out. I had never seen the original. So I watched it and I fell asleep. And then I was like, "Oh man, I gotta rewatch it."
It's a homework movie.
And then I fell asleep again, and I was like, "Oh fuck!" And I drank so much caffeine before I watched it the third time, And I didn't even watch the whole movie the third time. I just went over to a friend of mine's house who was already watching it, and I was like, I have to see this one 30-minute chunk of the movie just to make sure that I remember everything that
Gotta
happens.
be able to quote Rutger Hauer.
Exactly, and I got it out of the way, and then I saw 2049, and then I fell asleep at 2049.
I actually kind of like 2049.
I feel like I would have enjoyed it more had I not fallen asleep, and I got to watch it again at some point. But anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is even when I saw it the first time and I was like, oh, there's a character named Jude, when the fuck is Hey Jude going to start playing?
Oh, and don't worry, it does.
And don't worry, but it takes you almost 2 hours to get there.
The jukebox musical on a whole is such a sweaty genre because you have to shoehorn in these stupid setups so that you can pay out something that's not fun. It's just clever in a way that goes, hey, did you see what we did there?
Yeah.
And I don't know if maybe it's the comedian in me that I hate watching something like that where you're watching somebody really sweatily set something up so that they can appear clever in the end.
Yeah.
It's my least favorite approach to something because it takes no emotion to do, which to me is what makes art good.
Yeah.
It is the most math version of art.
Yeah.
And I get what the appeal is to a specific type of person, but it is antithetical to everything I value about creativity.
There's a thing that it is very difficult to pull off, and you can do it. It's totally doable to have something be telegraphed, and then the reveal is what the reveal is going to be, and it can still be done well. Have you seen
callback is still fun, the Chappelle thing,
Yes.
the is a great example where he tells you what it is, but he doesn't couch it in trying to trick you.
Right. Have you seen Incredibles 2 yet?
Not yet. I'm dying to.
So I will say this: there is something that is telegraphed so early on in the movie, and when the twist of it is revealed, you know it's coming. You just know it is.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter because the rest of the movie is so not based on that twist being pulled off.
Yeah.
Because it's based around the family, and it's based around them, just their characters and their importance, that you don't care.
Yeah.
And it's so well done that I can appreciate that.
For sure.
What Across the Universe does is the opposite of that, where it's just it's just hey, did you know we were going to throw this song in? I bet you probably did.
Across
but
the Universe
guess
has
what?
the same problem I have with Solo. Where because I refused to see Solo, and a bunch of people in my life got mad at me for being a real fucking bummer about it. And I was like, look, man, if you can look me in the eye and say there's not a scene where it's on Solo, meet Chewbacca the Wookiee, or I've got to go run the Kessel Run now, and
Yep.
and they just got very silent and were like, oh, you are just a monster.
I mean, that's exactly what that whole movie is, too. Even the part where, there's a level of there's a line that can be walked where instead of your reaction, I saw Solo and I was like, oh yeah, this is totally fine. It's a fun time in the movies. But I even was there's times when you see something happen and you're like, okay, yeah, they had to figure out how to get this in. And then there are other times where I'm like, hey, nice. There's a part at the very beginning of Solo where he escapes through the security pod, and it's literally space TSA that he works his way through. And he gets to this person, and they're like, "What's your name?" And he goes, "Han." And they're like, "You don't have a last name?" And he's like, "I don't know it." And they're like, "What? Who are you traveling with?" He's like, "I'm by myself." And he's like, "Solo."
Wait, that's
a literal plot point in the movie.
That one. Ooh, I hate that. I hate that so much.
But that's the thing, and a lot of other people are just like you, and they also hate it. But I sat there in the movie and was like, cute. I like that.
And Across the Universe is literally just that for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And when they're not doing that, they're singing terrible versions of Beatles songs.
And so bad. It's
and a lot of them.
34 Beatles songs show up in this movie. And there's so many that I hate the sequencing of. It falls into the other trope that I generally don't like about musicals. And I say that as somebody who did a lot of drama and musical acting as a child.
A former youth theater musical director.
Man. You get it, man. There's the trope in musicals where all of a sudden a musical number breaks out and it makes no sense. And it is so common because musicals can also do things with songs where, they do this crazy concept of moving the story along and doing things that make sense. And the jukebox musical, and it definitely in particular Across the Universe, do almost none of that.
Yeah.
Where sometimes it'll be like, oh, we're going to reveal a character trait. Like, guess what? Oh, this girl is a lesbian. And we know that because she's singing, I want to hold your hand while staring at a cheerleader. But also, the whole dance sequence of that is like she avoids cheerleading practice and is just sitting there staring at her from the bleachers.
Yes.
What is the point of this?
It all has that, like, every dialogue scene feels like the first 1 second of like a Mick G music video before they like kick into whatever the song is, where they give you like a vague setup for a neon colored concept.
Yeah.
Like the I want to hold your hand thing too just feels so of that time where it's like, and she's gay, and so we're gonna throw this at it, and it's like just kind of a soft pitch thing, but it makes us look kind of hipper than we actually are with this.
Yeah.
It's also funny because rereading the plot, I forgot that like there is like a almost default 60s plot that if you decide you don't want to actually do any work, like you can do. Because did you ever see the 60s TV movie from like the late 90s that starred Jerry O'Connell? And I'm trying to remember who else. I think Julia Stiles might be in it or something like that.
Is it just called the 60s?
It was called the 60s. It was an NBC like 2-night, 2-part like miniseries that was about a family and a group of friends like going through the decade of the 60s. And they hit like every shitty point. Like they end up at Woodstock and they end up at like the Watts riots and all these like, and you know, it's so dumb. But I love it because of how dumb it is. And also Jeremy Sisto from 6 Feet Under and May and all that stuff. He plays the shitty like revolution guy who literally dies the same way in the 60s movie that the shitty revolution guy dies in Across the Universe. And I remember even seeing it then. I'm like, oh, they're just fucking ripping off Sisto. But in that they played Donovan's Season of the Witch, which is a better song.
You're right. Yeah, you can't throw in a good. You gotta look if you're gonna throw in a Weather Underground reference,
right?
You gotta pick a better song to kill your guy to.
And nobody wants to like really embrace like the weird Weather Underground thing. It's always like it's revolution, but then it got violent and we got afraid and ran away before we had to be culpable for any of the interesting parts of the Chicago 7 story.
Yeah. You know, it would be a really great twist in a movie about the 60s if you brought somebody in who was very innocent and then all of a sudden they became the person who was like, oh, let's start bombing shit, and everyone else is like, no, why are we doing this? That should be your protagonist.
See, there you go.
But that couldn't happen in this movie because it plays for someone who loves spectacle the way Julie Taymor does. This movie plays it awfully fucking safe.
Yeah, it really does. And the one chunk is like the LSD Mr. Kite stuff really goes ape, but it feels so forced by that point because one of the things that's weird about it is because she's so spectacle heavy and this is a fucking jukebox musical about the goddamn Beatles, and yet it still feels like kind of conservative.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of points in the movie that plot points specifically really feel shoehorned in just as a way.
You mean the entire character of JoJo?
JoJo. Oh, man. Hey, how about we have a portion of the song that all of a sudden cuts to Detroit for no reason and people getting murdered. Oh, guess what? And there's all these other like little pastiches that are like you're throwing in references to Greenwich Village in the 60s, but you don't use any of the real things. Like instead of Cafe What, it's Cafe Huh? And instead of the Ken Kesey and the Merry Pranksters and their iconic bus Further, you just have, it's a wacky bus that Bono's driving.
Yeah.
Silly us.
Ooh, I hate Bono singing I'm the Walrus so much.
It's
like,
so
I just
bad.
Because he's like looking at camera too. Like it's just,
But there's really only like, it's a movie that you get to see some cool images, but you already saw them in the trailer. Like one of my favorite parts of the whole movie is when the brother goes to he goes to the draft.
Oh yeah, when
place.
he gets
And most of that whole sequence again also so bad and so terrible. But Uncle Sam looking off the poster.
Yes, that is a cool shot.
That's a cool shot.
And it's you're right, it's in the trailer and it's the best shot in the movie.
Exactly. It's so sad.
It is funny, like I hadn't even thought about that. You are right. Literally all of the like iconic, interesting like compositions and pieces that don't feel like kind of a mushy mess are in the trailer. The Uncle Sam pulling out, him sitting on the beach in the beginning. They literally like hit all of the parts that are like kind of compelling.
Yeah.
You could watch the trailer and get a pretty good sense of what the movie is without having to deal with the sweatiness of them trying to recreate the playing on the roof thing.
Yeah.
Which is such a weird chunk of Beatles lore that it's always hard to like integrate in with the rest of things. And the fact that this movie can't just do one chunk. Like the fact that it has to try to cover all of the Beatles back catalog and all these different pieces. And it's weird because it's pulling everything out of context, shifting it around, but also not saying anything new or interesting. So it's not, because like I love like cut up stuff. Like I love the band Negative Land, who are like all about like sound collage and stuff like that. They're kind of in that post Paul's Boutique craziness of like, oh my God, sampling can really do some weird shit.
Yeah, let's make a whole album about Pepsi and consumerism.
Exactly. Wait, are you aware of Dyspepsy?
Of course, I'm very aware of Dyspepsy. Did we just become
best friends, Jay? Because you're literally the only person I've ever told that album about who I didn't force it on them.
I have stumbled down many Wikipedia holes involving the band Negative Land.
Oh my God, they're one of my favorite. Like them existing just makes me happy.
Man, they've got a whole U2 album.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So hilarious to me.
And to me, like, so you could do a concept thing about the Beatles and do something that would make me interested if you actually recontextualize it and said something.
Mm-hmm.
But this is basically just going, the Beatles were the soundtrack to the 60s. Like, cool, man, that's literally what you're bringing to the table. Like, you've done nothing here.
Right. Well, you hit the nail on the head when you describe this movie as a conservative movie, because it's risk averse almost.
100%.
You know, there's something to be said when you take and you do the build up to this movie that Across the Universe marketing team clearly had in mind. We're like, we're taking the Beatles and we're gonna make something out of it.
High school and college kids, you want to feel edgy?
Come see this, and then you just throw in, it's a pretty stock movie. It's a pretty stock romance movie with a pretty stock Vietnam subplot, with a pretty stock
like rock and roll band narrative
element, and literally a person who's dressed like Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah,
it's not even middle of the road.
Like, at the time, I used to think like, oh, trying to like shoehorn a Jimi Hendrix narrative, and it always feels like kind of a bad call. Mm-hmm. But then, did you ever play the Wolfenstein games?
No, I have not.
He's in like the first one, like of the redos that they've done, because it's a redone like alt history, and he's basically one of the guys who fights on your team.
Oh, interesting.
And it totally flipped me. I'm like, oh, this just makes me more mad like Across the Universe and so many other things that have tried to play that Hendrix thing, because these guys actually did a really interesting version of it.
Man, that's it really is a shame that this movie comes from somebody who is known for creating a very interesting spectacle, and that's all that she did with it.
And can make compelling movies. Like, plenty of things she's worked on have been visually interesting and exciting and weird, you know, and I think that like even the people she inspires, like Tarsham Singh and stuff like that, are doing things that I think are a lot of fun.
Right.
It's weird. This just seemed like such an ambitious swing and a miss.
Yeah. That's the thing. I've seen movies that have been swings and misses before where I enjoy watching it.
I love a lot of swing and miss movies.
There's a lot of really very compelling swing and miss movies out there, but this just isn't one of them. It's not even middle of the road. It's a car that is trying to stay in the middle of the road, but its wheels are all out of alignment, and it continually drifts into oncoming traffic.
Can I say the one thing that I think maybe this movie did good for the world?
Please.
And that is that because it did not do super well, it kind of disappointed box office wise. You know,
absolutely.
It didn't do super great. I think it eighth, you know, in its opening weekend. So it wasn't like a failure, but it was not like the crazy hit I think they thought it was going to be. And it's weird. The behind the scenes, it makes me feel like somebody working on this saw it and was like, oh, this kind of sucks.
Yeah,
and we spent a lot of money getting those Beatles clearances.
It was originally supposed to be released a year before it actually came out.
As a way wider release than it ended up getting.
Yep, and then
and they fought over the cut, and she insisted on the longer cut that finally went out. And I feel like one of the things you could say is this movie's a little long.
Oh, it's 2 hours. It's almost it's 2.25 hours.
Is it
long.
really that long?
It's 2 hours and 14 minutes. It's way too long.
If it were even, you know, an hour 45, I feel like you could be a little less mad. If they pulled 30 minutes from this movie, it's a little denser, it's a little tighter.
If they pull the whole rock band subplot, this movie at least has some legs, and maybe doesn't get mixed reviews.
If it's just the nom and the love story and the like immigration stuff, like that's kind of an interesting story. But like it's because it's this decadent movie that wants to have everything, and ultimately like nothing is serviced by that.
You know, it's crazy to me. This movie got very mixed reviews. It got a 53% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Roger Ebert loved it, though, what I don't get.
It's crazy. He named it. He gave it 4 stars. He
put it on his top 10 for the year list.
Number 7 of the the year.
Crazy.
And I want to look at what the other movies.
Oh, yeah. And also, I'll finish
he
my
had for
point
the
while you
year.
look it up.
Go for it.
Is that because this didn't do super well, at least it means we didn't end up having to deal with a movie version of Rock You, the Queen jukebox musical. And like that only gets to exist as a Vegas stage show, because I think if there's like one thing that I want less than a Beatles movie, it is the Queen jukebox musical, like as a thing. And I feel like had this been a huge hit, that would have been the next thing sitting. I guarantee somebody was sitting with that first draft of a script with the rights sitting on a table. And when this movie hit 8th for a week, and they're like,
I'm like,
oh, well, I guess
fuck.
we'll just have to go back to that Freddie Mercury biopic that'll be out any day now.
Yep. All right. This is his entry. By the way, he did pick some good movies to be way ahead of it, thankfully, like No Country for Old Men, Juno. Wait a fucking second. How is... Oh my God! One of my favorite movie, not No Country for Old Men.
There Will Be Blood,
is not even on his top 10 list.
Oh, because I guarantee you, it's too long and it's too dark for him.
What is
I don't
wrong
think
with
Ebert
you?
was ever like a huge PTA fan.
I don't even think he has it on this list of like movies that he likes. This is crazy. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, it's in his tie for 11th place.
Okay.
Section.
Shoot the list at me. I'm super curious to see what the combo is.
From the bottom up, we got Into the Wild at number 10.
Okay.
Then The Great Debaters at number 9. Denzel Washington leading a debate team.
That's right.
We have La Vie en Rose.
Okay.
Which won an Oscar for Marion Cotillard. Across the Universe, number 7. And I want to, after we go through this list, I do want to read this portion of his review of it, because it's just like, I never realized how basic that Roger Ebert could be sometimes, and I love Roger Ebert.
I think he's even when I disagree with him, I'm like, hey man, like just because we don't agree doesn't mean you're like not a competent film fan.
But this portion of the review makes me be like, oh God, what happened to you? This is late stage Roger Ebert. Away from Her at number 6.
Okay.
The Kite Runner at number 5.
Interesting. Yeah.
Atonement at number 4. Before the Devil Knows You're Dead at number 3, which I hear is a great movie.
That is a great movie.
No Country for Old Men number 2, and Juno
number 1.
Yeah,
Interesting.
he loved it.
I am a bit of a Juno defender, so I'm always happy.
I like
when people,
Juno, too.
I think it's a solid movie.
I agree.
It's an imperfect film, but I kind of appreciate about that. I like that it's kind of messy.
Yeah, I will say I don't think it's Jason Reitman's best, but
absolutely
it
not.
is a really, really well made movie, and I enjoy it. Anyway, so this is
Did Jason Reitman direct Young Adult too?
Yes.
I kind of love when they
Young
team
Adult's
up.
fantastic.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because I feel like Juno and Young Adult are like kind of a perfect pair of bookend movies,
Right?
Because they both, I feel like, execute well on stuff the other one doesn't quite nail in a way that makes them like a really interesting back-to-back watch.
Somebody has posited this theory that Juno, Young Adult, and Tully all take place in the same cinematic universe, but just alternate timelines of each other.
I like that.
So Juno, yeah, and that's I think that's probably the best thing that anybody has mentioned about.
I love a
Jason
false
Reitman movie before.
timeline. Like I love when people just decide two movies are together. I have a friend who when I was in college, two of his favorite movies were The Warriors and The Girl Next Door, and James Remar is in both. And he just thinks that the alternate 70s goes back to normal, and James Remar's character goes on to just become a pornographer later in life.
That's great. All right, this is his blurb about Across the Universe for some top 10 list. Possibly the year's most divisive film. You loved it or hated it. Julie Taymor brings all her gifts of visual invention to a story centering on a group of friends living in Greenwich Village and expressing their lives through the Beatles songbook. They encounter people not unlike those in famous Beatles songs or albums, and the music sheds light on their experiences. Sometimes unexpectedly, as When I Want to Hold Your Hand tenderly expresses the deepest feelings of a lovelorn lesbian cheerleader. You call that unexpected, Roger Ebert? Saw that coming.
It's pretty telegraphed.
This movie captures the best of what the Beatles represented. Nah, I want to see it 2 or 3 more times, experiencing it like a favorite CD. Look, if you're going to waste your time and watch a 2.25 hour movie 2 or 3 times just so you can be like, yes, the music.
I've taken it all in.
Just listen to the soundtrack.
And really no one wants that either. This was kind of the golden era of like nightmare soundtracks to like like music movies, because this is right around the same time as like Walk the Line.
Oh yeah.
And like I remember being on a trip once and I was staying with my aunt and uncle, and instead of listening to Johnny Cash like records, they were listening to the Walk the Line soundtrack. So I'm listening to Joaquin Phoenix do a shitty version of Johnny Cash songs.
Yeah. God, look, just Just don't do it, guys. Just don't pay attention to Across. Just listen to a real Beatles album if you want to. Listen to the White Album.
The one thing that Across the Universe did accomplish is it's the only reason I've ever thought about seeing the Beatles live in Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
Because like I literally can't imagine something I would have a less good time at, or I contemplate how many drugs and what kind of drugs I would have to take to really be able to get over myself for it. And I just but I want to know if the narrative of that weird Cirque du Soleil show would hold up better than Across the Universe.
Have you ever seen a Cirque du Soleil show?
I saw the Michael Jackson one.
How is that?
It's actually a lot of fun. I've actually gone to a couple of weird one-off ones. One of my best friends works for a company that they do a charity Cirque du Soleil show. So I actually went to a one-off one earlier this year that was Cirque du Soleil teaming up with Jewel to do a Cirque du Soleil show inspired by the life of Jewel.
Oh, boy.
And Steve Wozniak was in it. It was the weirdest fucking thing I've ever seen.
Was he showing up on his Segway doing something?
He was wearing an animal hat because it was all kind of furry themed besides Jewel being in it.
Okay.
And he's sitting in a bar with Penn Jillette and a bunch of other stunt people. And he was like, I'll have an apple juice. And literally took till the end of the show for me to go, oh, I get it, because he worked for that company. I'm a little dumb. I would watch this weird furry Zoobly Zoo Jewel thing get turned into a movie.
That sounds way better than Across the Universe.
Yeah.
I saw
Jewel rules.
A long time ago. I saw a Cirque du Soleil production in high school as part of our theater class called Corteo, which is about a clown that is he's a real big boy clown, and he does silly, goofy clown things like throw a ball into the audience as we hit it around, like at a baseball game, and go, oh no, that's my ball, but has no inflection in his voice, so he just goes, that's my ball the whole time, and he's just saying that over the loudspeaker. We saw that.
And you just keep hoping he's going to throw his wife in so you can just get one that's my wife.
Yeah, that's my wife. We saw that, and then we went and ate at a restaurant called the Magic Time Machine in Dallas, which is a restaurant where all the waiters and waitresses are in costumes from movies across the span of time.
Wait, is this still open?
Yes.
Are we going to go to this at some point soon? Because that sounds amazing.
They only have them in Dallas and San Antonio.
Well,
so if you want to hit on a road trip,
tour Texas.
Yeah, if you want to go do a terrible comedy club in San Antonio and then go to the Magic Time Machine.
You've said my two favorite things, Jay. Shitty themed restaurant, bad comedy club. These are all things I'm very interested in.
Dude, I have so many. Magic Time Machine. Oh my God. I should write a bit about that one day.
It sounds like a made up restaurant.
It does.
It sounds like a bit that came to life Pinocchio style so you could write about it.
Because the theme of the restaurant is basically, we ran out of all the other themes. Let's just basically unload a hefty bag of characters.
I have a theory that perhaps they were gonna start a 50s diner and then somebody else opened a 50s diner a month before then, so they had to change it out. And they're like, well, let's just do like an off-brand Planet Hollywood.
Oh, also the thing about Magic Time Machine is that it's also supposed to be kind of a fancy restaurant, and they have like steak on the menu.
It's like Dive, that failed Steven Spielberg restaurant.
And they have wait, what?
Oh, in Vegas, Steven Spielberg had a restaurant called Dive where it was like you were eating a fancy dinner in a submarine, and it was like crazy expensive and it was super fancy, and now it's and it went out of business in like a year. And it used to be, I forget what it was called, there was some like divey restaurant, no pun intended, in Vegas that bought all their like silverware and cutlery and plates, so you could like go and eat like a patty melt at some shitty restaurant off of like the failed Steven Spielberg restaurant's cutlery and flatware.
Oh my God, that's like the restaurant that used to exist in New York that I begged my parents to take me to when I went there as a child. Mars 2112.
Never did that one, but went to the Jekyll and Hyde Club, and then it blew my mind when they made fun of it on Kimmy Schmidt.
Oh, they got that nailed. They had a Jekyll and Hyde Club at the mall by my house.
Did they?
Growing up.
I thought
Grapevine Mills, man.
What?
Great.
What blessed place you lived?
Suburban North Texas has all kinds of weird shit, man. We had a Jekyll and Hyde Club that later turned into an aquarium. This is all on a mall, by the way. We have an ice skating rink that turned into a Legoland.
Oh, I love that they all turn into like something else that's equally complicated to put there.
Yeah, it makes no fucking sense. But there's a restaurant that was themed around Mars called Mars 2112.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
And I made my parents take me there, and I would like to apologize to them for that, because I'm sure they wanted to have a nice time in New York, and I was like, Mars 2112, I want to get served by aliens. Anyway, is there a movie that you would recommend people watch instead of Across the Universe?
I'm trying to because I want to give like I feel like as far as Julie Taymor stuff goes, I feel like her version of Titus Andronicus is totally worth a watch. It's got an amazing cast. It's real well done. It is the pulp version of a Shakespeare play. Like, you do not need to worry about the language. You can instead just see a ton of blood splatter, and it's a lot of fun. If you ever want to see people like cutting off their hands and cutting out their tongues, but also like speaking in iambic pentameter, that's where you want to go.
All right. So there you
Plus
go.
Alan Cumming, who isn't in enough stuff.
He's
and
a
then
delight.
I'm trying to think if there's a good jukebox musical.
I mean, I'm gonna click on Jukebox Musical on not on Instagram, on Wikipedia, and see if there's anything that jumps out at me. And there really isn't.
It's a rough go. Like,
I do hear. I mean, this isn't a movie, but I do hear that the Escape to Margaritaville
I would watch
Broadway
the shit
musical
out of that.
is very fun.
is that a real thing?
Yeah. Endorsed by Lin-Manuel Miranda and by the McElroy brothers.
I'm a Buffett apologist, so I will gladly go see that. You gotta come. I've been slowly trying to just take comedians to the Margaritaville at City Walk, and it just pulls all of us out of Cool World, and we just get to sit and eat volcano nachos, and it is made of riffs.
It sounds great. I mean, as someone who has eaten at a Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville,
They're great.
They're great. Can't go wrong with them.
Yep.
They got the closed circuit TV where they're playing only Jimmy Buffett music videos the whole time.
Yep.
It's fantastic.
Hey, sometimes they play Sublime songs.
There you go. When you really want to get out of your head. Kyle, thanks for coming on,
Dude,
man.
this was super fun. Thanks for having me.
Where can my listeners find you on the internet?
If you want to hear me continue talking in podcast form, I have a podcast called This Is Rad that I'm hoping to get you on real soon.
Dude, I know what I'm going to talk about now.
Oh, I'm excited.
We'll talk about it off air.
But it's a show where, because so many podcasts are about people making fun of things, or I feel like this show is actually pretty civil. So but a lot of things, I just got mad at how many things are just I could have done it better. I feel like it's a lot of failed film students who bought an H4.
Yeah, I mean, woof. If you want to hear some uncivil episodes, listen to the Blazing Saddles episode that just dropped.
Oh, who was on it?
Omid Singh.
Oh, interesting.
And it's a great episode because it's the first person I've ever heard of not liking Blazing Saddles, and it's a very intense discussion.
I'm not a huge fan.
Really?
I don't dislike it. There's some jokes I like in it, but I think I caught it too late in life.
Fair.
And I've always been more of a Men in Tights and Spaceballs guy.
I mean, you and Omid should definitely talk at length about this. Personally, I like Blazing Saddles, but I think Young Frankenstein is the height of Mel Brooks' powers.
Interesting.
So there we go.
So this is rad, and it's just people come on and talk about a thing they like. We will do any topic, and so it runs the gamut from things that are pretty obvious, all the way to this is gonna sound like both insane and some hipster bullshit, but hear me out. I always say that maybe one of the best starter episodes is we had on the comedian Brent Schmidt to talk about Animorphs. And it's 2.5 hours long. We break down that Animorphs was secretly one of the smartest and most interesting sci-fi saga style storytelling pieces that's got this Dune-esque deep interplanetary lore, and it ends super dark. Most of the Animorph people die at the end of Animorphs.
There's a lot of teen murder in the Animorph saga.
And so that's a fun one because I remember reading them as a kid, and Brent was like, "No, but for real, man, we should get into this." And by the end I was like, "Oh my god." It gets super emotional because he talks about how as a kid in North Dakota that it was this thing he'd read isolated when kids were mean to him and stuff. It really hits a lot of the things that I like about my show. Or you could hear Rich Slayton and John Shefsky talk about balls on their episode that came out recently.
There you go.
I mean, running the gamut. And then also I have a stand-up album out called I'm a Person. It's available on iTunes and Spotify and Amazon and Tidal. I'm always excited when I see those royalty sightings that say they're from Tidal.
There you go.
It's just me and the Carters.
Nice.
So it's called I'm a Person, Kyle Clark. Check that out. So those are always my go-to plugs.
Excellent. I am available on the internet at Diet J on Twitter and Instagram.
At Kyle Clark is rad, so you can yell at me.
There we go. Twitter and Instagram at Diet J. JLightComedy.com for show day. It's got some stuff coming out the rest of this month and on July, so keep your eyes peeled on the interwebs for that. Please leave a review and a rating on iTunes. This is available on many podcast providers, but I care about iTunes. So probably too much.
They run
honestly.
that algorithm. It's how you get paid.
Get me in there. Get me on that.
Make him new and noteworthy.
Make me ahead of the Mad Men recap podcast. Why am I still being beaten on the top 100 TV and film shows by Mad Men?
It's a good show.
It is unconscionable. How dare you? Guys, this has been another episode of Blockbusting. Folks, go see something good for a change.
Yeah.